Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mattriarchy. I'm just going to presume that we have both ladies and gentlemen watching, but we might not. Who knows? Anyway, I am, of course, Reese, and I am joined, as usual, by Matt McGibson, way out there in Maryland.
Heyo.
And we are also today very pleased to welcome along #1 Marmaduke fan.
Thank you.
From a secure and isolated Alterna bunker somewhere at an undisclosed location. How's it going, Marmaduke?
Nice Mark Levin reference there, Matt. You can't slide those by me. I know my conservative radio commenters.
Fair enough. So, but how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. It's really nice to go from unemployed to full-time work. So I'm just like staying busy.
Wow, cool. I knew you were doing the freelance thing for a little while.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how freelance that works because it's not my business to know all that.
Right. Hide your power level on the internet, but I am a good proofreader. So if people are looking for proofreaders for all these Indiegogo books, hit me up.
They have to sign me up on that. Of course, in the second hour, our intention is to talk a little bit about our campaign launching this weekend, and I'm going to be doing all of the lettering and dialoguing and all that good stuff. So it might be a good thing to have another set of eyes and check me for mistakes.
Dope. Is this going to be an entirely new project, or is this going to be
we're relaunching the same one.
Okay.
We are tweaking many things about the project. We're changing the perk levels a little bit. The story ended up getting a little shifted around, and some stuff we want to change up with things. But it's still the Vox Populi featuring the Expositioner. First part of our mini series there. Although I will say, little low key here. Just today, Rico, our artist, and I were talking about other things, and ended up envisioning an amazing secret project for 2020 or 2021.
Nice.
So, shh.
It's a secret.
Should the world survive?
Oh, that's right. Because we're gonna. Well, when is the latest? I don't know. Global warming apocalypse supposed to happen?
They say 12 years, but it was 7 years ago, and I can't pay attention to that. I just know eventually the fuses got to run out, and I don't know when that happens.
Right.
Eventually,
I'm not worried about that.
If you're gonna die enough times, you're like, yeah, I don't know. Can you? Are you sure it's gonna happen this time? Because last time I was kind of disappointed. I kind of bombed my office building, and turns out the world didn't end the next day. And I got in a lot of trouble, so I want to make sure this time.
Now, are you guys a fan of the TV show, the My Name is Earl, that ran for a few seasons about a decade ago?
Gosh, no.
Okay, so Jason Lee, who was of course in Mallrats and been other stuff, he plays this redneck, and it's various redneck adventures. I don't want to get into the whole thing. It's a lazy. The overarching story is a lazy man's study of the concept of karma. But one of the funny bits in the show, they'll do flashback scenes. They go back to the Y2K event, assuming that it'll unleash an apocalypse where no records are kept. And so the various cast members decide they're going to hold up in the local Piggly Wiggly or whatever it is, and just survive there. Because there's all the food they need, and there's all the toys and TVs they need, and they're set up for the future by making that their little campground. And I thought it was just hilarious.
Yeah, I remember back when one of those end of the world stories was going around. I was like, I promised that the world the next day. I think it was like 2012. Like they said, 2012 world's gonna end. And I just, like I said, tomorrow morning I'm going to stick my head out the window. I'm going to scream, I'm still alive, and then go back to whatever I was doing.
Because it was the Mayans, it was the killer bees, it was Ebola.
Ebola was like, for something that people were hyping up to be like the next bubonic plague, modern medicines and quarantine and virus mutations kind of killed that thing off quick.
Yeah. And modern medicine is a marvel. So I just realized I'm going to go tweet out the link here again and go from there. So
I should do that too.
hello to the masses. We rise again on this Thursday ritual. Of course, I was noticing before the stream started, Chester Busby did his routine thing, and that's great. But his special guests are some folks that are doing a comic book involving partially naked women photographed as the covers. So we have a lot of competition.
Talk about Matt Wagner?
No, I can't remember the. It's called. It's about scantily clad women as secret agents. Kind of.
All right.
Yeah.
I had him on to talk about Dragoon Knight Aldrake a while back, and I enjoyed that. He kind of a good send up of kind of dragon. What's it? Dungeons and Dragons tropes, I think.
Oh yeah, it was. I have not taken the time to read all of it, but I really enjoyed what I have read. And of course, he's got Matt has such a great sense of humor. We had him on last week to talk about superhero, and it was a good old time. So,
any other projects coming out that you guys are supporting?
Well, right now I've actually had to pull back on everything, and I did back Expositioner the first time around. I cannot back it the second time. Because right now money's in a tight spot and I'm trying to put almost all my money towards getting a car. Like I work at a restaurant, so I get my paychecks. I'm all putting, which is where the bulk of my money is coming from right now. That's going towards the car, and the money that I get in tips, which has gone down significantly over the past couple months. Well, just in general, like business has been kind of weird, but money I get in tips, I'm going to be using for entertainment purposes. But what that means is that I usually don't get as much, or not getting as much tips now. It usually just means having enough money to go take my girlfriend out somewhere.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, I mean, I have seen projects I'm interested in. I mean, Earthworm Jim is one that, like, I might try to skip out eating out or something just to back it. But it's tough because I don't want to, because you build these friendships with people and you want to be able to support everyone. Like Mythoverse was another one I really wanted to support.
I've tried to go like the route of getting the digital book so I can just like put in a little to make the book happen while not breaking the bank,
Yeah, I think that's what I might be getting back into, especially I don't know. I was in the comic shop earlier today, and because like my interest has just gone so low, aside from a few books, like I think I'm at the bare minimum at my store, which is you have to hold 3 books, or they won't hold things, or you have to request 3 books to hold, otherwise they're not going to hold books for you. And like I was just thinking, I was like, you know what? I'm thinking of just putting a lot of my issues into storage, maybe sell some of them at a garage sale, because the past 2 years in comic books have been a roller coaster.
Yeah. I give away, I had that Alterna Indiegogo where they send a lot of duplicates, so I had a lot to give away right off the bat. But I'm starting to give away anything I can get digitally pretty easily, and I keep things that I like, and I can't get it digitally easy pretty much.
Oh, I am fully dedicated to the paper stock press. It's a matter of pride, and I think. Of course, you guys probably have seen the photo I pass around Twitter once again of my stacks on stacks on stacks on stacks of comics.
Right.
Both my pride and joy and my eternal shame, because let's face it, who needs that much storage space used up? Well, it's me. It's me. That's who needs it.
What I got to do, but the reason I got to get rich is I've got to try to rebuild my childhood Hulk collection. I was so stupid. I was probably just like going off to college and, oh, you've got to clean up all your extra junk before you go off to college. Okay, let's give away all of these 1970s and 1980s Hulk comic books by like all these legends of the industry. So what I'll probably have to do is get rich and like start collecting them one at a time again at like the crazy prices.
That makes me to weep.
All right.
I read.
Well, every kid's got that story. All of our parents had Batman and Superman until mom threw it away, and they could have been millionaires.
Yeah, I'm still mad about, like, it's always when you're not paying attention. Like, my mom got rid of my PlayStation 2 and my GameCube, and I'm still mad about it. Someone came. Oh yeah, I wanted to welcome Scott Bruckner. We have 4 viewers right now. I wanted to welcome in Scott Bruckner and Danielle. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. I was going to answer a question earlier. Last month, Sporkman got my money. And Mythoverse got my money. I really, 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 really want to get Shinobi Sasquatch. That gum at all. I need new tires on my car. So, sorry. And also, I mean, like, after talking to Matt Wenger about all of the stuff he's got going on with the deep context, the subtext within Super Harem. I really want to read that, but it's a lot right now. I got to figure out, priorities and all. So it's a tough one.
Well, clearly we just need Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to tax Ethan Van Sciver at 100% and redistribute his wealth to make a socialist comics utopia.
I don't get. A lot of people have this idea. It's like, look how Ethan rests at the top of his pile, making $1 million collectively, and to look at this guy over here who's just barely scraping by to launch his project. And I'm like, okay, let's play a little game. It's called Who Has More Public Presence. You're gonna look at this person. You're gonna look at this guy who's got like quite a legacy, a popular YouTube channel that I don't like very much, and he's a controversial figure. He's been backed by, he's been in 12 Rules for Life. He illustrated that. His name is on there. He's got a lot of presence versus, someone like Reese or like the Sportman guys, who sadly missed the mark. They don't have that. They're trying to build the business up themselves from the ground. They're not trying to, they don't have anything else to boost them. And a modest success can be the stepping stone to a bigger success, because if you have a lot of happy customers are your basis for your second project, your follow-up.
And that's one of the things that we were actually talking about, the Ideal guys today, is that we're planning on doing a flexible campaign, but we're also committing, and we're going to be putting that in the copy of the thing. We're committing that if we make over 500, people are getting their books. We're going to fulfill based on that. So we're going to set our goal a little higher, let people know, more of what is our money making point. But we're willing to go break even to make sure people get their products, because this has been our passion for decades. We want to spread that a little. So maybe that's the tension that brings out all the psoriasis. I don't know. Who knows? So now I didn't invite you on the stream to just talk about how wonderful my comics are, or how poor I am. Right? Those are we're not our
just the icebreaker. Let's talk about how we got so poor in the first place. Let's talk about old comic books.
Well, I didn't get poor with this one, but today I want to talk about Marvel's Civil War, and if you look right there, you'll notice I paid $5 for it.
Oh wow!
Because I wasn't really keen on the whole concept of it.
My memory of it.
I want to talk about Marmaduke. You had, and the reason I brought you on is you were talking where it was. I think it may have been one of your videos, and I commented on it. But we're talking that you thought that that Civil War was not a bad story. It was just out of place, and
it shouldn't be canon. Yeah,
should not be canon. So why don't you go ahead and take the floor here and tell us a little bit about your Civil War journey?
Sure. I remember, so this was actually during my hiatus from comic books. I remember reading like an awful Green Arrow comic book that was just so jaded and cynical. And I just said enough. So after like spending most of my childhood up till high school reading superhero comics, I checked out entirely and, just focused on my studies. And I had a few like comic book nerd friends in like the drama team at college, and they were talking about Civil War and describing it to me. And I immediately hated the idea. I hated the idea of Tony Stark essentially being like a fascist and him fighting Captain America. But they sold me on it so much that I finally like went to the library and I don't know. This must have been like later that year. I picked up the graphic novel, quote unquote, release of it. I remember reading it in one sitting. I think it was one of those that collected like a few issues from the different series that the event stretched across, and I enjoyed reading it. I still just hated the jadedness of it. And I think my immediate thought was, if this was an Elseworld story, if this was a darker take on the Marvel characters, I actually really appreciated the themes of liberty in it. Like I like that they kind of tackled the idea of registration, which is gun registration. It's something that's always been true about these characters, is why aren't they treated like, living weapons in this universe? Why aren't they at the center of like the Second Rights Amendment debate? So I kind of clicked with it where I saw, okay, they're finally taking an angle on, the superhero debate that I thought they should have taken a long time ago. It didn't make sense to me that mutants were hated, but Spider-Man was, like friendly and beloved. And so finally, there's like this kind of cultural controversy over the existence of superheroes in the Marvel universe. Now, the thing is, the second you introduce that, you're not in a kind of fun, playful, good guys versus bad guys universe anymore. And the same thing that's happened to Captain Marvel's happened to Iron Man. Can I really look at Iron Man the same way, knowing that he was a fascist in 2008? I can't really look at him or Captain Marvel the same way after that. And it's kind of like they have canceled its canonness to some degree. Like they had one more day to erase. What did they do? They erased Peter Parker's marriage so he could have his secret identity back. And at that point, I just don't care. I don't care about trying to understand continuity in a universe where you can just say, "Oh, we erased part of it, but not all of it." So I don't know. I don't know if we disagree. Like I hate so. That's my defense of it. I hate it, but I'd love it if it were an Elseworld story. So would you like it? So maybe the question is for you is, would you like it even if it were self-contained as this is an alternate take on the Marvel characters in some other universe? So not even that. All right. What?
Not at all. Not in the slightest. I'll get to that in a second because I'm going to talk about my background a little bit as well with it.
Yeah.
Is that so when I first heard about the story, I did the raised eyebrow kind of thing. Like, they're doing what with the story? And then I saw like the beginning part of it, the first storyline, the first issue of it. I read on the newsstand because 2006 still had newsstands that had comics here out in Western where I live. So I'm flipping through that first issue, and the entire premise that superheroes can mess up enough to justify that kind of government overreach, it wrecks, it destroys the fundamental conceit of a superhero universe.
Yeah.
If you take that kind of concept and you remove the agency from these superhuman people and say, now that you're superhuman, you have a different set of legal standards than the average American, you've broken it. You've destroyed the fundamental premises of a superhero universe to the point where it's not reparable, right? And so that was it. Like they just wrecked it. It's gone. There's nothing left for it. And I hadn't even gotten into reading about the characters yet. I got a couple of the tie-ins because I was following Runaways and Young Avengers at the time, and so there was a crossover, and I was like, "Ooh, I like both of these series," and it was pretty good. But for the most part, I was just like, I'm gonna go buy some other books than these because I just can't care at all. And so Iron Spider came out, and a bunch of my friends were like, "It's such a cool costume," and I'm just like, "It's from the Civil War."
Right.
And
so you go
Spider-Man Unmasking was, I heard about that, and I was like,
yeah.
I do that a lot, apparently. But I couldn't invest in it because I thought it was such a stupid, patently stupid idea, right?
All right.
I hadn't read it, right? And I had friends of mine who, at first they bristled and then they read it and they're like, it's really not so bad. And I had a buddy who went to graduate school and they actually talked about it in his graduate school on the section on pop culture. And so, yeah, he's like, no, you really got to read it. You understand it's a product of its time and everything. And it's important for understanding our blah, 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 blah. But years later, I went through and I bought it, right? I actually bought it twice. Sort of. I'd forgotten about this, but I had gotten a free Comixology book and with some Amazon stuff I bought. And I was like, okay, fine. I owe it to the history of comics to read Civil War because it's such a seminal series of early 21st century comics. And I forgot about it. And then later on, I found it for $5 and I picked that up. So I technically own 2 copies, even though I've only read one of them. But yeah, so I finally got around to reading the damn thing last fall. And the biggest, this is one of the things that spurred me on to read it was that What I Nerd Rage shared a snippet from the book on Twitter, and I reacted with, "This is the worst, weakest, most ineffectual, femmed out, low-key take on Captain America ever." And he got really mad at me.
He accused you of being a parody account. That's how mad he was.
Yes, he did. He's like, "You gotta be effing kidding me." And I'm like, no, there is nothing manly about this at all. And it totally misrepresents the character. And so then I was like, that's it, I gotta read it. So I picked the thing up and I read it over the course of a weekend. And I was like, I got mad. I got so physically mad. When I finished reading it, I chucked the thing across my living room and my kids were just like, so to demonstrate part of what I hate about it, and I went ahead and I did this with the book through, if you can see this,
Highlight
every line or action that is out of character, I circled in big black Sharpie marker.
All right.
and I've several times tried going through and right there's one Namorita acting totally unlike Namorita. Here we have here you have Captain America saying, "Does it even matter about whose fault it is?" Of course, Captain America doesn't care about people's motivations or anything. He's just all about results, right? There's no altruism in Captain America, for crying out loud.
So you're seeing this as a deconstruction of Captain America.
I would say not only is it deconstructing Captain America, it is an active and intentional misaligning of virtually every major player in the book. There is none of the major plot points are consistent with the characters behind them. Tony Stark is portrayed as being both authoritative and thoughtful. He's he's taking other people's opinions instead of forming his own. I believe one thing, and then some woman comes up and tells me I'm wrong, and oh my goodness, so let me think about that.
The only time that should ever happen is your wife. I'm
going to question my entire history of 20 years of doing this because one woman had a bad attitude toward it. I mean, even the inciting incident with the New Warriors, they are treated like a bunch of glory hog noobs.
Yeah, and I didn't like
and
how
that's not the New Warriors. It pissed me off.
I didn't like that either because I had childhood memories of like Night Thrasher and the other. I think I just saw the New Warriors guest star a couple times. It felt like they were starting to use, and that was also like the era where they started having like villains be jokes. It was when it was the era where they were starting to use their characters for meta commentaries rather than just kind of using them as characters in a campy, fun universe. So, all right. So
here's part of why, right? Right?
He has a dark writing style.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
He has a dark writing style, definitely. I couldn't get through Kick-Ass.
And not just the writing style. I mean, like Mark Millar is a very talented writer. He knows his way around the words. He knows how to manipulate a scene, all this kind of stuff. But his writing, I don't know what he personally believes, but his writing is nihilist. There is no truth or beauty in anything I've read of Mark Millar's. It's all shock value and grit. That's, you know, and I have no interest in that story, and I don't believe it fits with the Marvel universe at all. That's part of why I thought Ultimates was such crap, was because it was just, you know, Mark Millar just like vomiting all over the page again. It might as well have been The Authority or Planetary, because it had nothing to do. There was no consistency to the original Marvel universe in it.
Mm-hmm. I liked Ultimate Spider-Man. I feel like that was like where I got my love for Brian Michael Bendis, and I had never read a single thing by Brian Michael Bendis I've enjoyed apart from Ultimate Spider-Man.
Daredevil. You got to read his Daredevil. His old
Daredevil. All right, I think I did read a little. Did I? Are you talking about like from like 2017 or when was his run?
He did it like back when Bendis actually gave a crap about anything. He did it like back in the 2000s, and it was actually really excellent.
Okay.
It was heavy-handed and stuff like that, but it was actually really enjoyable. And the art from I think it was Malieve. It was really good. It was really entertaining. Some cool imagery. It was some cool cases, and man, how he fell from that. Damn.
Well, I actually got to back up a little bit because I have never been impressed with anything Bendis had written, including Ultimate Spider-Man.
Really?
Man. All it did was ape Stan Lee's stories and add 2000, you know, late Gen X edgelord shit to it. And that's all it was. It was a early stage balding Gen X guy trying to write to millennials while copying Stan Lee's stories. I didn't care for it at all.
I tend to feel like if you can, so I'd actually hold Spectacular Spider-Man up as a better example. I feel like if you love something and you take from it and you put a spin on it, there's a difference between I lovingly understand your work, I'm going to try to reinterpret it, and I'm just going to ape your work. So I have good childhood memories of Spectacular because I would read and reread like the Steve Ditko era. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was sort of like, oh, okay, it's similar story beats to the Steve Ditko era, but I get to feel a bit more connected to Spider-Man as like a 2000s kid because Peter Parker looks like me.
Yeah, and maybe a thing too. Part of my probably jadedness with Bendis's early Ultimate Spider-Man probably specifically comes from the fact that just before they launched the Ultimate Universe, Marvel had published the Spider-Man saga, which went through the entire canon of Spider-Man stories from 64 or whatever it was, all the way up until 1998.
Are you talking about those little paperback things they did? They were like Archie books, but they reprinted like the old Spider-Man books.
They weren't the size of that. I got the first run in the
all right
in the grocery store there.
Gotcha.
Volume set, and so it would read through, and there'd be a combination of comics and prose that would tell the entire story of Spider-Man.
Gotcha.
And so I had this entire story in my head. So I'm flipping through the Ultimate Spider-Man, and I'm like, here's what's going to happen in the next page. Here's what's going to happen in the next page. Here's what's going to happen in the next page. And oh my goodness, this one Stan Lee page took them 3 issues to get to.
Yeah.
And I really don't respect decompressed storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a crime against pacing.
It's interesting that you kind of you, me, and like your boy Zach, we've all talked about decompressed storytelling. Maybe it's because I'm a bit of a weeb too, but I've gained more of a respect for it. I just hate it in floppy format because I feel, and actually like the weebs, Japan, the weebs are Americans who are weebs, but Japan actually does a good job of having a standalone adventure feel like a standalone adventure. It's just they're continuing. So a fight scene will continue across an entire volume of manga, right? But every little subsection of it will have some sort of thematic connecting aspect to it. I think that Japan's just a capitalist industry. So they're completely motivated by success, and they're
Whoa.
I think they've innovated some kind of a style of storytelling the West is barely catching up with still. And of
Well,
course
I
they
think
took
one of the things we have too. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, and I think that they of course they borrowed from the Western comics market. I love the Bat manga because you can just see how he ripped off whole panels from the Western comics he was inspired by for the Japanese adaptation. What were you gonna say?
I keep trying to talk to the same time you are. But when looking back to that too, you look at like what was going on in Batman titles, in the X-Men, and Teen Titans in the 80s, in the Batman family titles, and Superman in the 90s, because I was a DC guy, right? Is that you had these story threads that would go for 2 years even, and they'd be touched on as you went. So you got these mini stories that would have peaks and valleys as they went along, and you had all these stories that would peaks and valleys as they went along, but you're getting all of that short story fix, but then there's also this bigger epic tale that's still good. And James Robinson's Starman is a perfect example of that kind of storytelling, and except it was just bookended. I mean, it has a beginning and an end, and that was the way that was done. But I don't mind that kind of thing. It's just got to have the payoff in the middle. And for me, and Bendis, which is somewhat off topic, I don't really feel that. Even like his current run on Young Justice, every other book is just garbage. There's some that are really good, but every other one, I mean, like the whole book, I could just throw it out and I never even noticed it wasn't there. There's so nothing that goes on in it. It's so decompressed.
I guess there's something where if you just get a name, you reach the point where you have this name, it'll sell regardless. Therefore, you can turn in work that you never would have turned in when you were young and scrappy and trying to get into the industry.
Yeah, you do have to turn in your best work when you're like you have to put all into or you're all into industry or break-in work. But after that, you'll notice a lot of artists and writers they kind of just they'll wind down quite a bit.
Yeah,
like a pilot episode of sorts,
Yeah, I think that's definitely an aspect of it. And one of the things that's a challenge too with some of that is looking at how much story is actually there. Side note in the chat, Carl was talking about with Holgrave. He's concerned that his storytelling is too decompressed, but he doesn't really have a ton of stuff out there. So even though it's taking a while to move out, it's because there's the content is more limited. I mean, in terms of page count, and I think that happens on a Carl page.
To make it easier, Holgrave is a free read, whereas when comics, one of the biggest issues with having DC doesn't have this problem as much. Like a lot of DC books, New 52 or Post Crisis, I could just hand a book to my little sibling. Be like, here's the Flash, and they'll be like, oh, this is awesome. And like they'll only have like one or two questions, like, okay, well, who's this character? And like I'll have to explain it to them. But with Marvel, they'll pick up like a Spider-Man book and they'll be like, Matthew, what the heck is going on here? Mm-hmm. And there's so much to unpack. It's like, why are they talking about Doc Ock in someone else's body? Why is this here? Who's this? Why is he talking to this person? What's this gay wedding they're at? What's going on? Like the kids are totally confused.
They're assuming an adult. They're assuming an adult audience with a lot of Marvel knowledge, right?
Yeah, and then on top of that, if you want to go back and get all this information, well, one, it's like because there's no breaks like DC has, you have to go through like 70 years of continuity for some of these characters, and then you also got to find like the quintessential books. You got to spend a lot of money.
Well, and part of that used to be the editor's job. If there was a specific storyline that they wanted to address from before, they used to have little caption boxes in the bottom of the screen that said, right here, it'd be like, oh, for more information on this, check out the Amazing Spider-Man 43, Excelsior. And you're like, ooh, I think I'll go to my comic shop and look.
Really quick, I will say about that, as like I do like when it says like, if you want to check that out, check out this great storyline or whatever. Well, the one thing is that can be frustrating, especially when it's an unrelated title. Like in a lot of recent Marvel stuff, it's just like, Yeah, it was really great teaming up with you to fight that vampiric doctor. It's just like see Amazing Squirrel Girl for a crossover issue, for a surprise crossover issue, and you're just like, what the hell?
How would you guys feel about a hard continuity reset?
Yes,
For
please.
Marvel,
Yeah, just like straight to the beginning.
What's 616?
that's what they tried to do with the Ultimate Universe, and I feel like they kind of jacked that up. So
It just eventually had the same problems that Marvel Universe did, but at least with DC, they've done it twice, and they get into comfortable spots, and they'll mess it up again. I don't feel like DC is nearly as much shambles as Marvel is, but I love a hard reset on Marvel. I feel like it's
part of what it was with DC, you got to realize too, is that it wasn't when the crisis, pre-crisis to post-crisis, wasn't actually a hard reset. What it was it was a merging of things. So some of the storylines were hard reset, but a lot of them were actually like, okay, this was the past, and now we're going to the future. So you actually had a continuity that instead of being 10 years of history, it was actually 50 years of history. And so there was a lot of smarter ways of doing that, I think. My favorite continuity is that New Earth post-crisis. I thought that was the best use of a combined universe in comics, with the exception of Hawkman, for a long time.
Yeah, they just. Oh man, I wish that it's the editors that are the problem with these things. They need to be the glue that holds everything together, and they're like overly permissive parents. They're just like, oh, can I go take this character and completely ruin them? Oh sure, just be back a little bit. Don't worry about me. I'll be here watching TV.
So let me float something past you guys. I've had a theory for a while that a lot of these popular superhero characters, at their root, they are cartoon characters, meaning think of them less like characters in a Tolkien novel, and think of them more like Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse. And like Donald Duck, he'd go on all these like crazy adventures, and they do all this character development with him, but you never worry about the continuity of the life of Donald Duck too much, unless you're like Don Rosa and you're like super obsessed with Karl Marx, and then you write a life story for Scrooge McDuck, right? But I think the height for Marvel for me is when they just kind of had like this easy continuity of, I'd say 70s through early 90s, of just like adventures, and you could go back and say, yeah, there was this saga, and there was this time when Spider-Man had his clone, and build on that. But generally, it kind of floated in this sort of easygoing, like, we're just having adventures universe where, yeah, they look back and say that person died, but you'd feel like it could go on forever. Right. Now, maybe the problem with that is you eventually run out of ideas. You want to deconstruct things. You want to inject some seriousness into it. Do you think? I don't know. Would you prefer a more mature universe where they could still like do these sort of themes of death and spirituality or what have you, or do you think we need a more kid friendly universe with maybe like more of an emphasis on bad guys, let's fight the bad guys, and then it's maybe more once in a while they try to do something serious?
It does need, we do need to kind of make it more family friendly, because a lot of material, you go into the comic shop and there's like, well, first of all, you see all your kid, if you walk a kid in there, they're going to see like all the indie books which have like gratuitous gore and sex and stuff like that. And then next to that, you got the Marvel stuff, and a lot of or Marvel and DC, and that's got a lot of adult content in it sometimes in and of itself. And then what I kind of wish they would do is, just to get rid of some of these people, these wannabe Alan Moores, is do what DC did with imagine like Little Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, imagine that, but the concept is Image Comics, and this is what Vertigo is. It's Little Image Comics, as in it's a big pile of shit. Just isolated, where all the whack jobs can go without really having to hurt anything with DC. But
we're just
out there.
We're just fire them.
I wish ultimately, but they seem too fond of these people.
I think part of the situation you have is they don't really think that there's a necessary conflict between, and Carl in the chat actually talks about like death and spirituality, and the serious themes aren't necessarily juxtaposed with kid-friendly content. In fact, look at The Hobbit, right? It's all through that. There's real space and everything. But I think one of the problems that we have is that I think you need to have both. You need to be able to have a comic universe that is capable of maintaining a heaviness and a severity, and maybe even what we call adult themes, but it also has the staying power to sustain, these more kid-friendly content with the loose continuity, and do both of them. And that's one of the things that like we've attempted to do with our comic universe and our web comic, is to present something that is teen appropriate, that still has a fun and an excitement to it, but that doesn't conflict with our serious stories about death and loss and abandonment and all that other kind of stuff that we have elsewhere. I think it's possible to do that, and in fact, I think that the Young Justice book from the late '90s, early 2000s was a perfect example of a balance within there.
Nice.
And I mean, one of the things that was done back in DC in the '70s was that they marketed like Captain Marvel books when they started making them again. They marketed them to the younger kids, right? The Super Friends, Captain Marvel books, anything that was on TV was marketed to like kindergarten to like 8-year-olds, right? And then they had Superman, that was like your transition into these other things with the action heroes. And then you had Batman from World's Finest, which was way more kid friendly, but then that also led into the serious Denny O'Neil Batman stories, right? And Green Lantern and Arrow. And you actually had a progression of titles that people they'd cross over in those appropriate age groups, and moving on as people grew up. So you actually had a product that grew up along with the kids, And I think we're missing a strategic marketing plan with something like that. And one thing, Marmaduke, as you've talked about, is that specifically, like we're talking about with the Alterna, in case you missed it, we came out on a Wednesday, where a lot of the content is pretty kid friendly, but a couple of them aren't, And nothing again, not mean to down talk Peter, but one of them really doesn't want to do a combined universe thing because it's a lot of editing, and he's already so busy as a publisher. But one of the problems that you have is if you don't have a universe that grows along with your clients, your customers, it's harder to maintain that kind of a thing. One thing that under Julie Schwartz, under Jeanette Kahn, that was part of DC's plan.
So I think I understand. So as long as it's a collection of independent books, you can have a hit, but it's hard for there to be like the brand for me for Alterna is finally someone's putting something on newsprint, because I love newsprint, and they've got a variety of genres, and I love a variety of genres, but you don't have the potential for a 1980s Marvel connection where like for me, the gateway drug would be Spider-Man, and then Spider-Man then becomes the introduction to this universe, and you become invested in the fate of the universe. Okay, that makes sense to me.
Like Mr. Crypt is an amazing book, right? And it's great for grown-ups to read, and it's great for young kids to about 14 to read.
Yeah.
But your 14-year-old boy is going to be like, this is kid stuff. Where's the death?
Yeah. Well, he's Mr. Crypt. He's literally dead. How much more can we have?
You know exactly what I mean.
I know.
But yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel like there's stakes. And I mean, as an adult and as a parent, I can see, it deals with all of these issues that are way more complex than a 14-year-old me would have thought. The 14-year-old me isn't reading Mr. Crypt. You know what I mean? I mean, like, I want the cape, I want the tights, I want to kick bad guys in the teeth. Come on, And that's one of those things that I think, I'm going to go back to one of my main talking points. Silver Age Aquaman was predominantly written for young girls, right? Even though so the boys could understand it and enjoy it because there's all this action and adventure, it was about seahorse mounts, and about true love, and about family, and about outcastness, and it was all of these themes in a superhero context that are still very much resonate in a language for 8-year-old girls that are telling serious, complex stories. And there isn't anything like that on the market that fits in with anything else. So there's not even like DC's done like their superhero girls line and everything, but it's separated and it's isolated and there's no connection to anything else. And I think with that, you're from growing up as a comic book reader, I think that they are missing the connection to the next thing. You know what I mean?
How would you feel about severe? I think I hear my voice coming over your speakers a little bit, but how would you feel about severe downsizing and maybe just like an emphasis on reprinting old books for a year, or maybe instead of like not like all their titles, but maybe instead of 90 titles, what if Marvel did like 30 titles and a bunch of cheap reprints to kind of like, because it's occurred to me they have all this great intellectual property for like the greatest comics in the history of comic books. Why not weaponize some more of that?
I don't understand why that's not happening. And that's one of the things that Peter also has just nailed on the head, Peter Samedi, of course, is that, you know, by reprinting the old books, part of it is, you know, with the distribution network constantly growing, people discovering alternative, they can get their back stuff, and it's great. But everybody should be doing something like that. I don't understand why they're pushing out material that isn't as good and not reprinting the old stuff. You know, I mean,
let me play devil's advocate, because Matt and Comic Perch have put this forward. So one of the problems you'd have is less bang for comic book shops. Because if I'm buying $2 a book, you know, I'm going to buy a lot of books, but that's a lot more stock for comic book shops, and presumably they'd be making less per bang. Now, maybe like to foreshadow my counter argument is if you can switch to newsprint, then the publishers could eat that, and the comic book shops could probably maintain a similar margin. I don't know how would you avoid the problem of hurting comic book shops with a move to cheaper titles?
I think a lot of it would come down to the fact that I don't think it would hurt. I think that would lure people back in. And one of the aspects that's really, I mean, the direct market is killing. It's slowly killing comic book industry. It really is. I don't mean direct sales. I mean single distribution through a single provider, and that's your only ticket to the market. It bottlenecks creativity, and it bottlenecks that access in a way that the comic book rules of supply and demand can't work out. And that's slowly choking out comic book shops. And that's just, I don't see how there's any other argument beyond that. And I honestly think if they were able to lure people back in with cheap comics, I mean, you've been, Marmaduke, you've been to the Free Comic Book Day events, right? Yeah.
And there are a lot of kids there.
Oh my God, are they? But are they there the next Thursday?
Right.
No, not a single one. Not a single one. Because first of all, they haven't read all their free comics, but it's because comic books are only for geezers. That's the only people that can afford them. I can't afford them. I don't know why I keep buying them. I don't have that kind of scratch, but it's a drug. But seriously though, I mean, it's one of those situations where we don't have, it's not building a market, and the Free Comic Book Day that gets kids in and gets them excited about these products, they're not coming back the next week because the point of entry is too low.
Yeah.
Think about the average comic book consumer today is what, 32, 33 years old?
I guess older.
Right? That comes down to, so let's say it's 35. They started reading comic books when they were $1.25.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I started reading comic books like 6 months after they jumped up from 75 cents. Right? And so, you know, my entry point was like literally the change I had in my pockets. Now you got to take a second job to be able to afford comics.
Yeah, and I just make the comparison. Like, I used to love going to, I didn't have a comic book shop where I grew up, so I'd go to Walmart. And Walmart would have these $5 movies, and some of them would be some pretty good movies. And they're not competing with the Walmart bargain bin. So it seems like they kind of understand the principle of it, because, you know, they're all doing $1 books. Aspen will do like these 25-cent. Well, they're usually not books. They're usually like just kind of like previews of all we have coming out. But I feel like I saw Zach review the facsimile of Wolverine's first appearance. I feel like that was the missing ingredient for me, because I love getting like a $1 old comic, but I wouldn't care about any of the new ads. And I do have a nostalgia factor for the ads. I feel like sometimes the ads were part of the experience of the older books. So I would buy every single facsimile of older books, almost regardless of which book it was, especially if they were doing it at like that $1 reprint price. Now, can they afford to do that on the fancy glossy paper? I don't know. I mentioned this in one of my videos about this debate, but I don't have experience in like a print shop. But my only experience with paper is just being an art student and knowing like a newsprint book cost me a quarter of what, you know, a high glossy, you know, sketch pad would cost me. So it seems to me that common sense would say if you switch to newsprint, the cost should go down because it's cheaper paper stock. But I don't know if that's practical for Marvel and DC. I would think it would have to be if you ask for it.
Well, I mean, one of the things Peter's talked about is when you get to printing the millions of books in a year that Marvel and DC do, that the cost is so insignificant. Paper is so insignificant that they're not losing that much money to print on better paper.
Okay.
They were still, and this is something that I didn't realize. I don't know if you remember the Johnny DC line, the DC back in like 2007, 2008.
No, I wasn't reading back then.
I found at a local thrift shop, they have a thing full of giveaway books.
Yeah.
Right. And there was an issue of Powerpuff Girls. 2007 that was sitting there for free.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I snapped it and ran out of there. I was sitting through and reading. It's good fun. It's on newsprint. Marvel, DC was still doing newsprint when they had newsstand distribution yet. And that was what? That was like 11 years ago.
Yeah.
They were using on newsprint for the newsstand. But in the shops with thousands of fewer points of sales, right? They're going glossy exclusive, but like we've talked about, what do you call it? The glossy stock, especially the stuff Marvel's using, isn't even holding in the paper. You know, the ink. I mean,
right? Black ink all over our fingers. I almost said black all over my face. That would have been cut out of context.
What are you doing, rubbing the comic on? Dude, that's weird.
I was trying to see if it smelled like barbecue sauce, like my old books do.
But yeah, I think those are all considerations. But economies of scale are a real damn thing. And so the question becomes then, I mean, like. Peter talks about that, like with Alterna, their ads cover their printing costs.
Yeah.
Sales are just profit.
Yeah.
So if their ads are covering their printing costs, how are Marvel and DC not covering the cost of their printing with their ads? Living in a world where that doesn't make sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't understand how that works out.
Now that'd be a go ahead.
My personal guess in that is it's because the product isn't moving, right? I think that's the real issue, is that they're not making comics that people want to read in the percentage that there are. And I think a lot of people that left comics in the last dozen years did so in such a way that they're just not interested in coming back.
Right. So maybe the industry's screwed and we just need creative destruction at this point. But maybe there's some things they could do that would have long-term gains to them.
Well, and part of my suspicion, and this is just a guess, right? Because the people that are coming back to comics, a lot of them are not coming back to DC. They're not coming back to Marvel, right? They're checking out Aftershock. They're checking out Boom, right? They're checking out IDW. And IDW has had a surge in the last few months because they've got their Dick Tracy book is phenomenal. Their Turtles book is getting rave reviews. You know, they've got some of their licenses. They've snatched them away from people that seem to hate the license, and people are really digging it. You know what I mean? And so I think that from what I hear, Dynamite's doing pretty good with their nostalgia line too. I think that we're seeing people that are coming for these side projects that aren't the big two. And I think that's actually part of what's affecting that part of the industry.
We might have superhero fatigue. Like I enjoyed Endgame. I thought it was a good close to the Marvel universe. I don't care what Marvel does with their movies. Really, you don't like Endgame either? You don't like anything.
I'm very critical.
You're a Rotten Tomatoes critic. I'm a man of the people.
No, Endgame was terrible.
Movies.
But
okay.
I liked Aquaman and Shazam both quite a bit. So I do like some things.
I haven't seen either yet, and that's good because I barely liked Man of Steel, despite it deconstructing Superman. And then I just didn't understand why Batman versus Superman or Justice League exists. So maybe like a Wonder Woman, Captain Marvel. Who would have guessed that those three would have been like the leads of the new DC movie universe?
Yeah, for real.
Hey, we've got somebody in the chat that I do not recognize. Aggressively relaxing. Thanks for coming in here. And I have heard really good things about the current Sonic book. I don't really care about Sonic, but I'm glad people are liking it. My youngest is a big Sonic fan, and he talks about it all the time. But I don't think he knew they had a comic out right now. So I'll have to let.
My problem is I'm kind of OCD, so anytime I want to get into something, I want to start at issue 1 and read all the way through it. And what have you? So your kid's into Sonic, but you're not. Have you seen the? This is so weird. There are two 1990s Sonic shows. Have you seen the serious one or the goofy one?
I haven't.
Okay.
But Matt was going on quite a bit about that the other day. We had, I think it was Carl. Were you on?
I think me and Carl, and but yeah, there were actually 3 Sonic the Hedgehog cartoons. But I'm completely fine if the one you're ignoring is Sonic Underground.
Oh yeah. That I knew about that one. I just pretend it doesn't exist. Yeah. I think the takedown of that came from like Vine Sauce, where he said this theme song sounds like Christian rock. Then he just starts singing Jesus, Jesus, Jesus to the Sonic theme song.
It's I mean, the whole show is just, I mean, they had some interesting art pieces that were kind of left over from Sonic Sat AM, but I don't know. My favorite as a kid was always The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, especially for Robotnik, because his performance in that, where he rolls all his R's, is just terrific.
Yeah. Like people make fun of the cheesy one. I loved it as a kid because it was basically Bugs Bunny with Sonic the Hedgehog.
I liked how goofy it was, and then a lot of people got really angry and said that they like. I don't get where the idea that, like, I remember the Nostalgia Critic review where he was just angry and saying like the show is stupid. Where's the actual plot and character development? And I was just like, is that really what you turned to Sonic the Hedgehog for?
I think the Nostalgia Critic kind of started the like only opinion you're allowed to have is that Adventures is horrible and Sat AM is great. But I was really impressed by Sat AM. I didn't know it existed. I bought it because I saw it and I thought, oh, that's the Goofy Sonic cartoon. I'm nostalgic. I'll buy it. And then I ended up getting like this really deep kind of like Star Wars thing with Sonic the Hedgehog. It really blew my mind a bit.
It works too. I think there's room for both in this series. Like it can, I mean, without going too far, and I don't know. I think it's easier to go too far in the edgy direction with Sonic than it is to go too far in the goofy direction. And Adventures is too goofy or anything, especially with some of the gags in there. I still thought were pretty funny.
Yeah, Adventures had a nice balance. I think that wasn't a bad modernization of Sonic. I think it kept true to kind of the design roots of the character. He didn't look like Mickey Mouse anymore, but he still looked like Sonic.
I actually really like in the minority that likes his modern design with like the thinner legs, the taller body.
Yeah.
Or I guess thinner everything, but yeah, I actually like it a fair bit. Although I will say that the one of my favorite Sonic cartoons, I think the best, or outside of Sat AM, one of the best made ones is like the one that they had on Cartoon Network recently, based on the awful video game. Sonic. Because like towards the second season, when Cartoon Network booted it to Boomerang, the writers just like, oh hey, no one's caring anymore, so let's just do whatever we want. And they had these hilarious episodes about like Robotnik or Eggman his robot and the henchmen go on strike. So then he just starts bossing around other robots, and then they go on strike. And eventually, like at the end of the episode, there's just this huge army of robots, you know, with like missile launchers and everything else, just sitting outside his base holding picket signs. I love that. And then there's a lot of great moments like that. There's a lot of witty humor. There's a lot of like socio-political stuff that was actually pretty funny just because of how out of the left field it was. There was conspiracy theory humor. There was great stuff referencing the quality of the Sonic series, or like what the Sega's doing with Sonic itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, they really need to stop just rebooting things and give something new a chance. And they all just stop. And they all like look at the dirt.
And that's actually one of the things that's really interesting too. And to change the subject off Sonic and back to other comics for a moment.
His arms are blue.
Hey, what?
I said his arms aren't blue.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, but with
get your
the IDW's Ponies series, which Mim Headroom turned me on to, and I picked up a couple of issues of. It's got a level of storytelling that it's multiple layered. It's fun, silly little girl adventures, but all of this really neat commentary and thoughtfulness that's worked into it too. A very, very well crafted story that is enjoyable for multiple people, and I mean multiple types of people. You know, on a simple level, on a complex level, that's really great. And I really, and that's one of the things. Again, part of the reason it can do that is because it's consistent with its interpretation of the characters. So because it's true to who they are, you don't feel left out or abandoned by the story as a whole. And I think that's if you come from a different place, which brings us back to Civil War. So when you talked about that, you thought that the Civil War would be a really good comic if it wasn't tied to continuity in the same way that Kingdom Come was supposed to be, in the same way that Watchmen was, in the same way that Days of Future Past is an alternate story, right? Why do you think it was good?
Well, you got me on the hot seat. The thing is, I read it and I didn't hate it, but I haven't reread it when you think about it. So nothing about it made me say, I've got to come back to this and read it again and again, like I've done with Ditko, like I've done with The Dark Knight Returns. I think rereadability is a good measure of some, like I've read like 30 manga this year that were fun. I'm not going to reread them because I got the point, you know, the first time through. Rereadability to me is like the definition of how you can tell something has something magic to it. And that's when you really got to start like thinking about it and breaking it down and saying, what did this author do to really get me into the rush of things so much? So maybe what I liked about Civil War was I liked seeing Captain America represent a liberty idea against a tyranny idea. And I was rooting for Captain America, but I didn't even like that they weren't, there wasn't a clear side. Like maybe in some issues they would lead you to kind of root for Captain America, but other issues they kind of lead you to root for Iron Man. So I have a feeling that you and I might agree that there needs to be like a clearly defined idea of good and evil behind storytelling, or it just it devolves into meandering, you know, like staring at the belly button lint and, you know, what is wrong with the world? Everything is chaos. Like I feel like those kinds of themes can be used in the context of something meaningful and uplifting, because that's a character going through questioning. That's a character being challenged by, you know, grim realities. But if you don't have an ultimate thing to say about truth, then it's just it's just whinging about everything is chaos. And I think that Civil War suffers from that in hindsight. But maybe like on my initial reading, I was kind of hopeful that this would be like a story of Captain America's philosophy triumphant over Iron Man's philosophy. And, you know, now it kind of feels like that's a continual problem for a lot of Marvel books. Sorry? With the benefit of hindsight, it's sort of like say it one more time.
I lost you at now that.
Oh, now that I'm looking back, it kind of feels like moral relativism has just become a long problem for Marvel Comics. Like people will share that panel of Spider-Man, chewing out Daredevil and explaining, you are done. You're not ready for this. And finally, Spider-Man's serious again. He's a hero again. But the status quo for Spider-Man is he's a goofball. He's not serious. He's not a hero. I feel like Marvel has kind of lost touch with like the basic good guys are good. They stand for these, heroic, virtuous principles. Bad guys are bad. They're selfish. And because they've lost touch with that, it was kind of like inevitable that we get to this weird, comic book drama point.
Well, and I think what coming to the Spider-Man issue, I want to address too, because I hate Spider-Man as the goofball.
Yeah.
The goofball, the quips, the snarkiness, that needs to be a cover for the fact that he's a complex person doing a difficult job that is probably impossible, but that's what duty calls for. Spider-Man should be a study in duty, a study in responsibility, which I don't know why that's a puzzle to people. And that's the future of Spider-Man as a father is that's the character.
Everybody, I haven't met a single person who doesn't love that 90s Spider-Girl series.
Yeah, I mean that's the trajectory. I mean when Peter, he's abrasive. He grows into being a man. He goes through a lot of struggles. He finds a girl. She's broken. They help to fix each other. They're passionately in love. They have a baby. The baby gets killed by the resurrected recurrence of his arch nemesis. Killed the last girl that wasn't quite perfect for him.
Yeah.
Come on! They really dropped the ball. In a lot of ways, that was a moment that broke the Marvel universe, and they didn't know it yet.
Yep, and that could have been the setup for putting Peter Parker through hell to get his family back. That's another thing that breaks the character. Like Iron Man's a fascist, Captain Marvel's a fascist. Peter Parker essentially sold his daughter to Satan, right? Like, and even if you try to do like silly Billy stuff, I can't. Even though if that's condescending to the character, I just can't read him anymore as a hero. Now, unless maybe like once in a while I'll be forgiving and say, okay, this writer gets the character, so I'm going to pretend that One More Day doesn't exist and I'll just enjoy this writer. But Marvel has such a brand problem. I don't know. I really don't know what you do with Marvel. Maybe indie is the future because we just need we need like a Batman for the 2020s, like Superman was the Superman of the 1930s. Maybe we need a new phenomenon.
Well, and I think part of what we have, if you look at comic book history, and this is something that I've looked at a lot because like our timeline in Ideal Comics is actually built on comic book history, right? I mean, like the first superhero emerges in 38 because Superman was created in 38. We've actually designed our timeline around the eras of comic book storytelling. But it's reaching toward a thing, but I'm not going to go into that right now. Because it's part of our long game story. That you don't have to get all of it to get it, but anyway, that's the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to support it.
Yeah, thank you. This particular story is one tiny piece of that bigger puzzle. But anyway, I have some sort of problem in my brain. I'm going to get back to that in a second, though. My point is that when you come to it, if you look at comic book history, right, like DC was the game in the 30s and 40s, and even in the 50s, right? They were the mark that others were judged by, and so like they went after Fawcett, they went after quality, because they were the top dog. I'm not saying that was right. I'm saying that's what it was, right? But that's just how it ended up working out. But by the time that other people started falling off and DC was stagnant, right? Even though DC kind of invented the Silver Age, it didn't take off. It didn't recapture the public mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's just part of a thing that some people did and some people didn't. But what ended up happening is that Stan got sick of writing kids' stories. He wanted stories that had complexity. He wanted a story that had depth to them, And so he went through and said, let's go ahead and tell these stories. Let's assume our readers can pick up on it. Let's do it. And the Marvel Age was so successful that it made DC up their game, right? And DC, throughout the late 60s, throughout the 70s, man, they were to the point where in the 80s, like X-Men with its existential crises type storytelling, and Teen Titan with the concept of maturity and development, and these kids growing into adults were neck and neck for popularity.
Yeah.
And Batman and Superman became this whole kind of a thing. And I mean, my goodness sakes. And when I talk about, because some people will talk about the 90s being a great period for comic books, but I think a lot of people miss that the 90s wasn't just big because of Image was hugely successful, and it wasn't just big because of the giant pouch era. If you look at what was going on in the Batman books, if you look like what was going on in Flash, with Mark Waid, the stuff he was doing in Captain America too, you had a level of complex storytelling that was part of this massively epic world building that was true to what these characters could be, and still held up this concept of absolute truth, of heroism, of justice, in a way that like a lot of the lefty writers never even knew the complexity of the story they were telling. They were just being, I believe in a lot of ways, were being carried along with this muse of beauty and truth and never even knew they were part of it.
Yeah.
But that competition made them up their game again. But we're at a point now because of saturation of media, because of, and I think that the comic going public has gotten a false jump boost in their feeling toward comics and superheroes, because the Marvel movies up until the last 2 years had gone back into the well and pulled out these hero myths and played them out again. Mm-hmm. And even the Civil War movie wasn't the Civil War comic, right? And I want to talk about that in a little bit.
I haven't seen the Civil War movie yet. I am so out of the loop. I read it. I haven't watched it.
Oh, it's pretty good.
Okay.
Good. I won't talk about that then. We'll have to save it for Civil War 2.
But that's something that I never want to actually talk about.
Yeah. No, I meant this Civil War. The supremacy of the concept.
Itself, I feel like, because I actually have an interesting take on that. Like, I felt like I enjoyed it more when I saw it in theaters, but when I left it, I was kind of like, oh, well, that's kind of happened.
Yeah.
But most of it does is just set up the events in future movies, but like the rest, I don't know. It just didn't sit as well with me after I like left it and thought about it for a little bit.
A lot of what it is Marvel. The Civil War movie was really the end of their Winter Soldier story, so it had a lot of that stuff going on with it. But I think one of the things we're looking at is I think indie comics and your small publishers like Alterna are at a place where, especially if somebody can put together a universe that is going to be that kind of thing I've talked about, going to grow with a fan base and is going to get young readers in, and is going to place where the stagnation of the big media, the big two that are owned by these giant conglomerates, can actually matter. And that's where they can see that the downside to it, because they've got a real competitor.
I hear a lot of creators who are talking about like collaborative, universes where things will occur together. What do you think about like not publisher-led creative universes, but creator-led creative universes? For example, like Alterna could publish, this book by these 5 people who say our 5 characters live in the same universe, but Alterna could also publish these books by these 5 people who have a shared universe. Do you think that it needs to have that brand identity attached to it?
Oh, I don't think so. I think that's one of the things with social media, where you actually have the benefit of saying, where we know these happen the same way, and we're getting published by Alterna, and we're getting published by Antarctic, and who cares, because the fans are following the product. I think that's definitely a thing that can happen. It makes movie deals difficult, but we're in the comic business, not the movie business, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a way of necessarily spreading that out. I mean, I look at what Mr. Marvel and Josh. I don't know Josh's last name. Anyway, going on with
the animator.
Anyway, what they've got going on with their Science Wizard branding for like Lawn Pool, but Lawn Pool and the first guys are all real tight. a bunch of some of the other Wicked creators, are, they're all in the same little clique of folks. I think that's a factor that's going to play in, I think, to a benefit personally. But back to the subject of Civil War. One of the reasons that I just felt, in addition to the situation that it's full of mischaracterizations, and I think that some of the biggest ones, I think Iron Man is too easily swayed by the statist idea. You look at Iron Man, has always been somebody that's kind of done his own thing. Tony, and so the idea that suddenly he's going to toe a line in the sand doesn't really make sense. And it's also contrary to the one I mentioned, one of the fundamental premises of a superhero universe is that individuals maintain the right to act on behalf of justice for themselves. Right? That a person operating outside of the law is not operating outside of justice because the law exists for the protection of the citizenry. And if the government can't protect you, then you must protect yourself and others. And so that slightly right-wing perspective has been built into the comic book narrative. And in Civil War, Tony and the whole team Iron Man subvert and they detract from that idea and claim that it's non-extant, that it doesn't matter, it doesn't exist. That's part of my problem with the premises of it. But also you have a situation where Captain America, who's supposed to be not only a voice on behalf of liberty and freedom, he's the voice on behalf of liberty and freedom because he is perpetually prepared. He's that independent man that everybody could be. And so he gives up some of his freedom for the sake of preserving the freedom of somebody else, but he's capable of preserving that freedom because of his dedication to preparedness. He's an amazing strategist. He's got an instinct for knowing where to hit stuff. He's got all this kind of, not just physically, but tactically. Yeah. He's the next level tactician. But the Captain America in Civil War is kind of an idiot who just does stuff and doesn't think it through and is totally governed by his feelings and emotions and is feeding off of that kind of a place instead of being somebody who's prepared and thinking ahead and owning his responsibilities and all of that kind of stuff. And that's part of why the freedom versus fascism debate that's in the subtext of the book is substanceless for me, because they don't have the root that makes these characters' struggles matter.
So, something that might have helped me is I was a purely Spider-Man kid, and I would say, oh, look, here's a cool guest star in Spider-Man's book. But, I think I read the Avengers, like Marvel Essentials, but to me, most of the other characters in the Marvel Universe were just like cool costumes and like cool adventure guys. And I was completely invested in Spider-Man as the journey of a hero. Therefore, when I read Civil War, right, I'm not as invested in the other characters, and I'm not picking up on, I'm sure they got mischaracterized. I knew just from the New Warriors that something was different about this or something was off about this from the comics I read as a kid. But that might have shielded me a little bit from feeling the impact of it. Like one of the things I hated was when they ended like the Ultimate Universe. They had like Galactus show up and just eat a bunch of people, right? That's such a nihilistic way to end a series or a continuity.
Yeah. Perfectly fitting with the continuity architected by Mark Millar, though. So,
well, we're Mark Millar. He gets no love.
You got good.
None for me.
I have a lot of I actually do have a lot of respect for him because, like Reese has said, he's a very talented writer. But yeah, I think it might have been an editorial issue. Like, I'm almost wondering, and I said this in the comments or the chat, really. I almost wonder if he wanted to write this as a alternate universe story, but Marvel, like Quesada or somebody, just say, hey, wait. That'd be a really good idea if you took this and we made it into like our big comic event and it shook the Marvel universe. It's gonna get a ton of sales that way. And he's like, okay, whatever, you pay my bills.
Great work, Quesada. That worked out great.
I keep wanting to call him Quesadilla, but I feel like I'd get called racist.
Oh, he'd call you racist anyway, or Just smartly condescend to you on how polite he is to the customers, you idiot.
Yeah, that sounds like him.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that's and like I said, I mean, I think that the moment to have a real conversation about, freedom versus responsibility is existent within the story, but because nobody really harnesses responsibility, and then the big thing at the end where Captain America tells everyone to stop fighting and he submits to the unjust government. A lot of people, this was Weaponized Nerd Rage's perspective way back when, was that, this showed the nobility of Captain America. But I'm looking at it, Captain America got himself into a situation where he's fighting in the middle of New York City and thousands of people are being killed. That's not Captain America. He's not that kind of idiot. He's not Superman as envisioned by Dave Goyer under the influence of Zack Snyder. Come on, he's Captain America. That's the thing. Is like that kind of secondhand thinking. It just doesn't fit in with a Cap that I grew up reading.
Do you pull the lever and kill the 5 people, or do you not pull the lever and kill the 1 person? But then
yeah. Well, it's just like, I mean, the Captain America end to that decision is the same one that you see at the end of Batman Forever. Of course I had to save them both.
Yeah.
That's what I do. It's the same kind of thing. And that was one of the debates inside of Endgame too, is that the ineffectual, drug along by the circumstances Captain America they displayed there. I just couldn't stay. I just couldn't take it.
Huh.
I couldn't take it.
Boy, I don't know. I kind of like Captain America walking alone to face off an entire army from Thanos. That felt like a pretty Captain America-y thing to do.
Yeah. There were moments. I'm not saying everything in Endgame was horrible, but and actually, it was the same way I felt. I feel very similarly at the Endgame the way I felt about Justice League. There were good moments, but the sum of the parts, whole less than the sum of the parts.
It's a confusing time travel buddy flick with a cool fight scene at the end, and I like fundum. I have 2 criteria. Like I have fundum movies where I can like turn my brain off and enjoy it. And then I have like my actual criteria for movies, which is The Dark Knight. I can't watch The Dark Knight enough times. Every time I watch The Dark Knight, I see something I didn't see before in it. So that has an entirely different criteria than like Transformers for me.
Yeah, I think when it comes to me, I say, is it enjoyable? Because something that's bad, I love bad movies, especially like when they're kind of intentionally done bad, like a lot of horror comedies. I really love those. But yeah, if it manages not to be entertaining, I think that's actually something. What was that guy on TNT that reviewed monster movies? Joe Bob Briggs. Yeah, he said famously, and this quote gets shared around a lot: the worst thing a movie can be is boring.
Yeah,
that's kind of the way I view it. Let's see. Nacho says, or Pickles says, Planet Hulk was way better than Civil War, and I'd rather watch a 1 out of 10 movie than a 5 out of 10 movie. Yeah, it's kind of a way of thinking about it. It's like if you're gonna make a mistake, make it a big one. Like when it's hilariously bad, it's better than mediocre.
Yeah, and one of the things, to do a little name dropping here, but one of the things that's very interesting, I think it's a good perspective. Mike Nelson of Mystery Science Theater fame was asked once what the worst movie he ever seen was, and he said Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. And they're like, how can that be the worst movie you've ever seen? You've seen really bad movies. We've watched you see really bad movies. How can that be the worst? He said anybody can make a bad movie. Anybody can make a bad movie. But to make a bad movie with an unlimited budget takes real talent. So aggressively relaxing, and the chat says that the current War of the Realms event is how to do a mega crossover. built over years with characters acting right and in a great story.
See, like I just responded to him. I said, like I have such low expectations for almost all crossover events. Like normally there's like a ton of really forced writing. You have characters acting out of character, which is what we're talking about. But I think that kind of some of it plays in the story's favor, and some of it plays like it doesn't help anybody. But right here he's talking about War of the Realms, which I countless or a couple times I've talked about it. I called it War of the Worlds. Completely different series.
Yeah.
And I had not paid it any mind. Like I just thought, oh, here's another crossover event, and I was just thinking, I'll just kind of sit this one out like I have the past couple. Just hear the highlights or disappointments from people on the side. Hear who dies, who lives, and move on. But hey, if it's good, I mean that's nice. I think more comic events need to be worth it.
Yeah, I mean, and they're like, you look at Crisis on Infinite Earths. If you really want to go back on it, into the realms, all of the characters in Crisis on Infinite Earths acted according to their character. Unless there's some minor character that I just was unaware of or something like that. But from my reading, all of them were in character. And it was one situation where the cast was so huge, if they needed a heel turn, they knew who to go to. If they needed the noble sacrifice, they knew where to go to. If they needed a helpless victim, they knew where to go to. So it was a situation where they didn't need any of their major players to act out of character because they already knew. Wolfman was one of the original fanboys went gone big. He knew his cast, and that was something that worked out well. And it could very well be a similar situation with War of the Realms. I haven't read it all. I got to be completely honest, and this may make me sound lame there aggressively, but I've been I have not read Jason Aaron's Thor stuff. But what they've done with Thor conceptually over the last 10 years it crosses the line of cultural misappropriation, right? It not only is conceptually a mockery to the Marvel comic store, it's actively insulting to Norse culture. And so I have a hard time even imagining spending the time to read something that I'm pretty certain is just going to make me pissed off.
What you're bringing up is maybe kind of an interesting dilemma for the comics market. Is they've ticked a lot of people off. I got ticked off by Quesada specifically, where I just thought he was so rude. I had enough of the drama of it. So not caring spared me from the drama, because now if the Marvel ship blows up, I can laugh. But once in a while, I'll see like a True Believers, and I love the idea of True Believers so much. I still have to violate my own principle and support it, right? So there's this problem that there are people who are reading the comics and saying, well, this is good, like this nugget's good, this series is good, but so many people have been burned by the brand of it that they may not come back even if there's a string of successes. What's a healing look like for you in like the mainstream superhero comic universe?
Well, I mean, I've gone through a last period where I just wasn't buying for financial reasons, or buying back issues or picking up auction lots or that kind of thing rather than getting monthly. And so for a lot of it was, and I couldn't get into New 52 at all. I mean, that was a slap in my face. It was, I'm sure, purely emotional. But I've got a lot of comics, and I used to write for a DC Comics fan magazine, right? I was a hardcore DC guy, and to have them just, wax off, 70 years of history so they could start over again, except for Green Lantern and Batman, because Jeff Johns was too involved. That it was a situation where I was like, nah, I'm not participating in this, And it was also convenient because that's about the time they entirely stepped off of the newsprint, the newsstand distribution, and at the time we didn't have a local shop. So, but the rebirth and calling up some of those elements from the old continuity and some of the spirit of that was a real interest to me, and I've picked up a couple of things here and there. with it. The new Hawkman. I've been loving Silencer.
Yeah.
Man, they're ending that so that Bendis can use Leviathan for his big whatever plan to desecrate the Superman, whatever it is.
Blast his family off into space.
Just because. Why not? You know, I know when the love of my life says, honey, I think we should spend some alone time. I'm like, okay, that's good. Here, why don't you spend it in space? That's how I live my life.
So long, 10-year-old from the only series that everybody on the internet was talking about how good it was last year.
The only thing everybody agreed upon. Yeah, it was. They actually killed Superman so they could bring this version of Superman back because everybody loved it. But no, that's cool. We don't need that Superman anymore. Let's just go ahead and castrate him on live television. It'll be fun. I don't understand it at all. And the other thing about that just gets too is if you get like I said, like, you know, his Teen Type, I mean his Young Justice, that relaunch, every other issue has been really good. He's handling Tim Drake in a realistic way, and Tim Drake's my boy from way back in the day. But I mean, I've really enjoyed it. But every other, I mean, like 1, 3, and 5, 2 and 4, just really bad.
So I'm curious, with so much like not gelling for you, have you like found refuge in like manga or indie comics, or are you still kind of like trying to trudge along with DC?
I just pick things up that I like, right?
Okay.
So if it's something that I can't sign on to, then I'm pretty much out of there. I haven't really gotten into manga too much.
Huh.
I don't know. A lot of people are like, you should check out My Hero Academia, and I'm like, maybe.
I think it's weeby. I use a similar like category for manga. I think there are manga that you kind of have to get into manga to enjoy the tropes of it, and then there are like they're the great masters, and they kind of transcend their culture. I kind of feel like it's the reason I feel like it's the future of the industry is I feel like they learned something from the West, and they've kind of like picked up on those traits. And even though they're doing it through the lens of Japanese culture, I haven't read a manga in the past year that isn't about like uplifting eternal absolute thing. Well, I actually no, scratch that. I've read some dumb. I'm sorry, there's crappy manga, but the hit rate is so good. Like Spider-Man to me is this great, you know, hero's journey story. It's the kind of thing you carry with you throughout your life. And so I think the reason so many young people especially are getting into manga is they have such a great hit rate of, you know, great heroes' journeys story that you have a better chance of running into that in the manga section than you have of running into that, you know, with new Captain Marvel and new Squirrel Girl. So
I think that's a key word. You said there is new.
Yeah.
Even when I was like, you know, I was like not buying new comics at all because I was so pissed off by the New 52. I was back binge shopping. You know what I'm saying I have got hundreds of books that I haven't read yet from the 70s, from the 80s, just stuff I picked up around the wear, back bins, auction lots, people who knew I collect comics who just dropped them by my house. So I mean, like, I'm not at any shortage for reading, you know, these old classic stuff. And,
yeah.
And so that's one of the things too, where it's like, you know, if I ever get, you know, too pissed off, I'm going to go back and read an Alan Grant Batman story. You know,
Yeah.
my whole cabinet's full of the stuff.
So the principle is you need a refuge to go read good stuff when you're just tired of the drama of this sucks, right?
Yeah.
All right. You're going to love My Little Pony Monday when I start that video series. I might have to draw a special, like, Great Dane, My Little Pony style thing, avatar just for it.
Oh my goodness, that's something else. So, well, so I'm going to go ahead and I think we've beaten Civil War to death, and I think we all agree 100% right that it was terrible. I mean, I guess I do have to step back and say, if you were just to take the characterizations from where they are in the book, right, if you weren't to apply any other knowledge into it, it's cohesive, right? It's a well-told story that involves realistic dialogue, and the motivations of the characters are consistent within the book, right?
Right, but it's not a building block for anything.
Right, and even the new warriors, as they're portrayed in the book, if there weren't any other instances of them, it's a legitimate way to look at a world full of superheroes. And in fact, in our ideal comics universe, there are several characters that have similar motivations throughout the course of our greater mythology. That some of it's out, some of it's not, but yeah. So there's that is. I mean, for what it is, it's not horrible as long as you don't care about, truth or beauty. Although it is pretty. I don't want to say McNiven is a good artist.
Blunt as ever.
Yeah. But with that, I mean, that's like I had a similar conversation with Pope Fire a while back ago about Kingdom Come, and I think Kingdom Come is actually kind of terrible for what it did to the DC universe when it was allowed to be brought in continuity, because it requires a destruction of a universe in order to bring about this story. And she liked it. She liked it a lot, and so that's a whole difference of opinion we had. But it was a really good conversation. That for those of you guys in the chat, you can check out my channel. It's there. You can go back and watch it. And she's a charming guest. Love having her on. She left, so she didn't even hear me say that. But that's okay. I think that Mark Millar, as I've said before, he knows how to tell a story. I just don't care for the kind of stories he can tell. So, but yeah, that's where I come on it. And do you have any further words there, Marmaduke?
Yeah, so the comment that kind of started this was, I think I said, I like Civil War so long as it's not canon and nothing is based on that. And I think what you kind of clicked with me on is that I never really, I went into it not appreciating the idea. I came out of it still not appreciating the idea, despite kind of like having maybe like grudging respect to. I guess that's the point. If it wasn't the Marvel characters at all, it would be an interesting thing. But I think that there's a gap between interesting and eternal. And
Yes.
Something I think about is I've read books I think are horrible that I think have a really interesting concept. And what that means is there's something within that can be. I wouldn't rip it off, but if you resonate with a concept in something and you don't think that's been capitalized on, that means that you have this golden, goose that lays golden eggs that could potentially be capitalized on.
Yeah, and I think so. And I think there are a lot of stories that are built from the ashes of failed stories, or people take it a different direction. And I think there's a real legitimacy to that sort of concept. But I think like one of the things that I have here is, hang on. There's somebody in the chat said something that was.
I don't get the Squirrel Girl hate. The comic is so great. They did an issue with a splash page of an escape room you could solve. The Great Silent Issue and its hilarious Twitter companions. I don't think any of us like Squirrel Girl, do we?
No, I don't. My thing with it is I just don't think there's any substance to it. And the few times I tried to give it a chance, there is no intrinsic nobility within Doreen to make me care about the greater things. And that's one of the things like you were talking about that there's fun dumb stuff and then there's not, and then there's the lasting, like you said, the interesting versus the eternal.
Yeah.
For me, if it doesn't have something lasting, I have no interest in it.
Now,
There are very few things that I think that are just dumb that are still fun. Very, very few. One of those are probably interviews with oh man, what is his name? Can't remember his name for a second. Ted Nugent. Ted Nugent interviews are hilarious and they're no lasting value. but it's a very small list. Even in like good, funny, silly stories, I look for like Mr. Crypt is a great example of a story that where it deals with belonging and home and place. Those things matter. And even if it's a silly story about a skeleton who's taping a mustache to his face, there is still greater worth in it. It has it holds to our human experience in a way that gives you time to ponder on it. I mean, Psycho K.O. is similar. It's just ridiculously silly, but in the silliness, it reflects upon reality in a way that can give you pause to think about it. Maybe not for super long, but it's targeted at prepubescent kids. So there's a thing that still leads it on to that concept of truth, that concept of mobility.
So maybe my way of speaking to aggressively relaxing is I gave 2 trade paperbacks, the old college try. And my experience with Squirrel Girl is like in the Steve Ditko concept of the character. She was kind of poorly drawn. She was very goofy, but there was this meta joke to her where she's a goofy character, but she's a hero. And because of that, she can overcome a legitimate threat like Doctor Doom in the most ridiculous of ways. And then the kind of ongoing gag of the character is that she keeps taking out these serious villains using squirrels. And it's a one-note gag, but it's a gag that kind of underscores like this legitimate heroism that she's actually willing to go into battle with these people. For the Ryan North run, I felt like their way of handling it was, it's kind of tragic because they picked up on some of what made it work, but it became about Ryan North doing meta adult, like really just legitimately nihilist humor in what's supposed to be a children's comic book. I don't think children read, Friedrich Nietzsche. Plus Erica Henderson, like interpreting her as just like redesigning the character to make her kind of plonky or whatever. I guess it's silliness without the substance. It needs to have the substance of me feeling like this is a hero. This is someone I admire. This is someone who I'm rooting for to win. I have a hard time with that because like Powerpuff Girls, I think Powerpuff Girls is hilarious, and they would sometimes have the girls do like really selfish things, but the general tone of them is they were straight superheroes just going out to save lives and fight monsters. And I think that aspect of to them helped them get away with darker, edgier humor because you had this kind of uplifting context for throughout the rest of the episodes usually.
One of the things I really appreciate about Powerpuff Girls is when they had the episode where Buttercup is selfish or too aggressive, or they have the episode where Bubbles is selfish, or they have the episode where Blossom is arrogant, right? Mm-hmm. They suffer real consequences within their sisterhood, within their responsibilities because of these things. Mm-hmm. And they learn in the course of 15 minutes how to compensate and correct and achieve forgiveness for their own selfishness. And that's one of the things that I really appreciated about it. And I'd say I have not read all of Squirrel Girl. There may well be some just fun stuff. Like one of my favorite non-superhero comics is a property called My Gal the Zombie. And a guy who's become a good friend of mine, not a great friend, but a good friend, Dan Connor, put the idea together. And it's kind of an Archie, kind of an art style, and it's got a lot of ideas about what belonging means. What does it mean to be accepted? What does being an outsider mean within the context of these silly stories about a girl, a college age girl doing college age things like trying to fit in and find a place in the world when she's an outcast because of her being a zombie, right? Mm-hmm. But even there, even with the silliness that is an intrinsic part of his formula, there's still this complexity about belonging and about owning your own lot in life. And the tagline to the story is she's not going to let a zombie being a zombie spoil her afterlife, right? She has friends and she still has commitments and all the things that go along with the mundane side of life, despite this fantastic and potentially tragic outcome. And I love that kind of thing. I think that there is a real root of the heroic within the mundane, and I think that his stories are a great example of that. And I can see an idea like Squirrel Girl being similar to that. But I have never seen that fleshed out. And maybe it is in a way that I didn't see.
I think you'd have to look like before the Ryan North era, even to get hints of it. And she was still a gag character. That was the consistent thing about her, is you could interpret it all as a gag, but there was I don't think they could help but have like underlying heroic archetypes for like the heyday of Marvel. So.
I think, you look at like even the gag character can have a real, even a gag character can have a real complexity to it and a real food for thought.
Yeah.
I think one example of that is Mxyzptlk in Superman.
Right.
Was caused the Battle of the Minds for a character that was known for his brute strength.
Yeah.
And even with that, Alan Moore in the Whatever Happened to Man of Tomorrow took that up a notch and made him a legitimate physical threat as well, which is one of my two favorite Superman stories.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Even though Alan Moore is like a weird pagan who deconstructs everything, he sometimes nails it.
Well, and the thing about Alan Moore's stuff is Alan Moore didn't used to deconstruct everything. That became a shtick because Watchmen was so successful. You look at like a lot of his stuff was, and even Watchmen, and this is something that I'm in a minority opinion on this, but I've never had anybody be able to convince me different about this. Watchmen isn't just a deconstruction; it's a reconstruction. What Watchmen is doing, a lot of what it does is it shows that without good motivations, heroes don't have meaning. And at the end of the story, the characters, that survive either disappear or develop a good motivation for doing something. It stops being about their selfish motives. It starts being about something else. But that reconstruction only happens in 2 pages.
And it literally, it promises that the truth that Rorschach recorded will be known. So that isn't a postmodern idea. The idea that the truth will ultimately get out and people will know the truth. That's an eternal idea.
Well, and even you look at Owlman and the New Comedian starting their life together as something different and reclaiming the thing they had forsaken. Right? That's a heroic concept that, we lost our way, but there is hope out there and there is justice out there, and we're going to seize it. We're not defined by the past. We're going to own the future. And I think that's a big theme that I don't think most people pick up from Watchmen. And obviously the creators that are trying to recreate that, that golden goose, I think don't either. And I think, with what Tom King does, I think he obviously is missing the boat on that. I think that Grant Morrison misunderstood that. I think Joe Quesada and Dan Didio both misunderstood that. I think that's fairly obvious based on the things they're putting their name behind. But I might be wrong. Maybe they get it and just think that's a stupid message or something too. I don't know.
Man, I took up all your time to talk about your comic project, didn't I?
Oh, yeah, that's okay. That's okay. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and give a quick pitch. And I was hoping my day at work was nuts. And so I was originally planning on getting together some of the pages to kind of do a screen share on and to show that off so that people could take a look at it. But that didn't happen. So if you guys give me just a second, I'm going to, rather than preview much of our page because we haven't got that done, I'm actually going to load up a working document that has our perk levels on it, what we will be offering, and then I will share. But give me just a sec. That's an interesting little thing. Okay, hang on a second. Hey, Matt, say something interesting.
Me?
Yes.
Interesting.
Ha!
I'm down in the comments talking about the saying, aggressively relaxing here. He says he feels that Ryan North has nailed it. He really likes it, never misses an issue, and it's coming to an end. Frowny face. And I just said, different strokes for different folks. He likes it. My personal preference for comics and what I really enjoy is the Rocket Raccoon from Scotty Young back in 2014 was my absolute jam. And he did a follow-up series on that. I really love him. That's an artist I'll follow to like the ends of the earth almost when it comes to his stuff.
I've heard a lot of really, really, really violent opinions. I mean that in the Victorian sense about Scott Young's art.
Hmm.
So,
I think he's one of the best cartoonists on the planet right now.
yeah, I mean people that love his stuff absolutely love his stuff. And so that's a big factor in a lot of stuff there. So okay, just about here. So for those of you who don't know, and just one more second, I decided to change my mind at the last minute because that's something that I do sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And all day driving. So Thursdays is a day I work for a mental health organization. I specifically work with ill teens and young adults and try to help them figure out what to do with their life and how to make that happen. Kind of like a life coach, I suppose you could say.
I can see why truth and beauty are important to you.
Yes, because that's the foundation of good thinking.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to encourage people to build something that lasts, something that matters, they've got to have their head straight about stuff. And that means taking long looks at themselves and what their actions have led them to, whether good or bad, and being completely honest about that, and hope for the future. If a person, young or old, doesn't have hope, then they'll never strive to push themselves toward past uncomfortable things. And that even is as simple as making sure the rent gets paid. And so that kind of stuff matters to me a lot because I see daily just about the consequences of living in a postmodernist society and how it hurts people. Yeah. And from that idea that there are no absolutes, and that really, really wrecks people in deep and dark and painful ways. So yeah, there you go. That's me being maybe a little judgy.
Clean your room. Oh, I didn't do the Canadian accent right. Eh?
Clean your room, eh? So, but anyway, hang on. Okay.
I love Young's work. Fun fact, Deadpool has only killed 12 people since Young became the writer. Nice. He's really cleaned up that character.
I think Young was actually the perfect choice, in my opinion, for where to go. Like his sense of humor and especially how violent Young tends to be, I think it was a nice choice. I haven't read a ton of it. Like I got the first couple issues of it. And then I'm gonna like go back to it eventually and get the trades. I've just, like I said, money's been kind of tight lately.
So what I'm doing, I'm trying to get my screen share working like I want, and I guess maybe it's being stupid. I don't know. We're just going like that. So what I've got going on here with what our story is that it's called Tales of Shadow. Vox Populi is what the name of the story will be, and Vox Populi, of course, means the voice of the people, and but we're specifically looking at a hero character named the Expositioner. I was hoping to share some photos of it, but my screen share is being really stupid right now, and that's just, man, it's annoying me. I'm sorry, everybody, but the Expositioner is a hero who's it is just not giving me the option to even share those photos. Huh. Okay, fine, Google, fine, you win. I'm just going to go ahead and use my face for now. Talk about it. He's a character who was a professional superhero for a security firm that subcontracted with a major metropolitan city. and he was shamed and framed and became an outlaw. And rather than give in to the past where he finds himself, he decides to continue along the path of yeah. P.S. Melton, thanks for joining us, but you did in fact miss all of the Civil War talk. So, it was scattered throughout the stream too, so I can't even point you to the specific moment. So anyway, where the heck was I? Hey, we actually have, give me a second, see if it'll be here. I've got our title card on the first version of our title card. Let's see if it'll share.
Technology, technology, technology.
So this is going to be our title above the comic there. But Expositioner is, like I said, he's an outlaw street detective who has dedicated himself to averting the law and still helping out people from various crimes and muggings. And the reason I call him that is he's about telling the stories of the victims and helping them to find their ending to their own story. And so it's play on exposition as a storytelling device. With that, he is tracking down a series of missing persons in his fictional town of Fremont City. And in the middle of it, he discovers that these missing persons have been abducted by a series of monsters. And he has to use his investigative skills in ways he never imagined to try to find out what's going on behind that. We're doing a mini-series with the story, and so we're crowdfunding starting on Saturday for our first volume in it, and it's going to be at least 28 pages, full color. And let me go ahead and do the thing here. Come on, menu. To show you what kind of perks we're going to be getting with the thing here.
What's going to happen to you if you get like 30,000 backers? Right.
I don't know, man. That's incredible.
8-hour drawing streams of you just drawing the $1 drawings all day.
Yeah, probably. That would be real something. Now, here's the thing about the $1 level, and it's really kind of a funny. I went ahead and volunteered for it. I am not a very good artist. I'm not doing the art on the project. I'm the writer, right? I'm doing the story and the dialogue for that's I misspelled digital in our little internal notes here. Fix that. Okay. So with that, my little sketches are not something that's gonna break me because it's very rough. And I'll be putting some examples of those up on the thing to show off. And one of the things I didn't get it finished, but that I meant to show also. Go ahead and open. Marmaduke saw the rough thing of it. There's a little video on my channel of I'm working on it. But see here. Go back to the screen share. There's
Nice.
of the Marmaduke's little logo, and you'll notice that first of all, there's no background yet.
Yeah.
That'll be fixed. And I'm going to spoil my surprise. This here's a Red Bull.
Oh no! Will I get to meet Ninja though?
No. So that's a little joke to the one of Marm's streams.
Boy, that's from my second channel. You are going into some deep Inception in joke humor there.
So yeah, So that was a little sketch. That was about a 20-minute sketch that I did there, and that's what we're talking about. Is something on that. It'll be a postcard that'll be mailed to you, and it'll be a little drawn little postcard, probably a ballpoint pen sketch, and so that's the intention with that. So for that $1 level, if somebody really, really, really wants a mediocrely drawn, ballpoint sketch of their favorite whatever, there you go.
So you're not going to have it stack, right? It's not if I get the comic, I'd have to like buy the $1 separate, right? That as a way.
Yeah, the $1 sketch is separate. Right? That doesn't go with everyone. That's
Right.
just if you.
All right.
That's additional.
All right.
Everything else stacks. So we're doing the e-comic version. We're doing that for $3. Okay, and we're changing up our levels. We decided I was Jeremy Lott with Mystery Men. We had him on, and he was talking about how he did his pricing, and I was inspired. I said, "This is the way to go about doing it."
Yeah.
So we really totally changed our formatting up here, not to match his, but because his was such a great scheme of how he laid it out there. So for $4, we're going to be doing the e-comic version and a stack of digital goodies. That's include one trading card file and one poster file, right? And we're doing a pair of posters that are going to be in the campaign. They'll be released throughout the campaign as far as what we're going to have on those. At the $5 level is a physical comic. The shipping is not included. It'll be separate, but that physical comic is going to include a centerfold poster. And everybody who gets a physical comic gets a centerfold poster as part of it. And you can be able to pull that out just along the staple. These are all going to be saddle stitched, just like you're pulling them off a rack, right? For $7, you're going to get the centerfold plus a bonus 10x13 pinup. That'll be there in the book, not stapled. So for $10, you also get 3 random trading cards. We're going to be doing a 9 trading card set. And at the $10 level, you just get whatever we pull out of the box, right? For $12, you can get 2 comics, 2 of the centerfolds that are pinned in the book, and then 2 of the pinups separately. At $15, you have 10x13 and the full 9 card set. You get all 9 cards that are all from our universe of characters. And we have a universe that goes, our alternate history is mapped out roughly to the beginning of time, but the superhero era starts in 1938, and we go all the way, and then we'll have characters from throughout our history that's in there, including, and I am so excited about this, we are getting 2 we have 2 card sketches that are done by Peter Cimetti.
Nice. That is great.
Yeah, and I can actually show those here in a little bit. I've got the files on a different screen. We can go ahead and look those up there. Let's see. But yeah, those are, I was ridiculously pleased about that. Yeah, so Peter Cimetti has given us his blessing to go ahead and use a couple of sketches that I got from him for a couple of our characters. I'm going to try to pull it up. We'll see how that works. Actually, I think I know how to do it. I just figured it out. Anyway, so at the $20 level, we're going to be getting the comic, centerfold, then 10x13, and a 9 card set plus an ash can. Okay, we have a bunch of ash can comics we've done. We are planning on one specifically to release with the campaign. It's not connected to this story. It's a different part of our universe with a different team that's working on it. That's part of the thing. We've been making, we've been building this universe since 2005. We've been online with our webcomic, which it's down right now because we're changing web hosts. It's a whole thing. But that webcomic's been published pretty much since 2006. There's tons of stuff on it. And one of the ash cans we're working on, deciding which one we want to use for it, is actually more directly tied to our webcomic continuity. And it's going to be real fun with that one. For $30, you can get all that stuff plus your name on a road. Fremont City, where this whole thing takes place, is a fictional city. Like I said, I'm a DC guy, and I love Metropolis and Gotham and Star City and all those fictional locations. With all their alternate history that's worked into that, we did the same thing when we designed our universe. And so Fremont City, Colorado, it's nestled in the foot of the mountains. If you were to draw a straight line between Denver and Castle Rock, Fremont City would be in that spot. And that's where you have, if you want your name on a road that will be there in perpetuity, whenever we have it, that's going to be a location in our universe, your name on a road there. Or for $50, you can have your face on a monster. We've got several of these creatures that are going to be showing up through the course of our story. And if you really want to have your face on one of the monsters, we'll give you that. So
how many of those are there going to be? Is that going to be limited? Is the monster one going to be limited?
Yeah, it will be limited. We need to, that's one of the things I need to double check with our pencil artist about tomorrow. I think we're probably going to have no more than 5. I think we're probably looking at 4 though. Wait, no. I can't believe I forgot this. In thinking about this, there's going to be, I think, 4 living creatures in this story, which is not any kind of religious joke. But in the secret lab, there may be some corpses as well. We'll have to double check that math. But that one will be limited. So. Yeah, that's where we're at so far. Do you guys have any questions?
I cannot wait to be a backer.
I have not been checking out the thing. One of the other things that we're doing too, we have decided we are going to do this as a flexible funded account. And with Indiegogo, what that means is that anything over anything 500
abyss.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said I'm looking at the infinite mirrors that you're sharing right now, and
Did not skip the next one.
Now I see.
Oh my goodness, it's doing that here. It's only screen sharing that. That's so stupid. It's supposed to be screen sharing my whole screen, which means when I change tabs, it should tab over, but it looks like it's not doing that. Fine. We're just going to stop. Guess I can't show off my cool Peter Samedi cards.
Can you minimize the window and then it'll be your normal screen?
Well, let me try that again. Screen share the entire screen. There. Minimize.
Aha! I see him.
Okay, this is Buckskin Boone. He is our avatar for everything we love and hate from being from Western Nebraska, Eastern Wyoming. And he's Pecos Bill as read through all of that experience. So that's one of the possibilities for the Ashcan is a Buckskin Boone story written by our Forces artist, Rolf Gardeau, who's also providing the pencil art. And it's either that guy or it'll be Chad. I don't want to get into that too much. The other Samedi card that we have is right there is actually X himself as drawn by Peter Samedi.
Cool.
Which
it's cool.
Yeah, when I commissioned these sketches, I had no idea they would actually come on trading card sized stock.
Huh.
And when they got there, I was like, I wonder if Peter would be cool with us doing that. And he is, in fact, gave us his blessing. So own your own limited, I'm not sure how limited, if we'll do second printings or whatever, but Peter Samedi trading cards from Ideal Comics. So yeah, I'm pretty ridiculously excited about that. But,
I think that wraps everything up, doesn't it?
yeah. Let me just go ahead and look over to the chat, guys. So cool. I guess we'll go ahead and call it a night. I think that beep on my phone is my kids telling me that they have returned to pick me up.
All right.
Because my oldest is driving now.
Nice.
So thank you very much, Pickles. Hopefully we'll do that. And Easy Bake Coven, how's it going? Got there, appreciate that. We got a share from him in our new Ideal Comics Twitter account, which we just got started up. As we relaunch our website, we're actually integrating our new website with our Facebook and our Twitter and different ways. So we'll hopefully have a lot more, get a lot more people to the content we're going to be putting on the website, all kinds of fun stuff with that in the next couple weeks. And of course, Saturday is our launch. We may be doing a special launch stream on the Ideal Comics channel here on YouTube. And we'll let people know about that. And does anybody have any other ideas or questions before I go? You guys in the chat, you guys on the thing?
I think I'm all set.
Okay.
How about you, Marmaduke?
I will be backing it. I will be sharing it, and I cannot wait. I will be following closely.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited for this project. X was one of the first characters that Chris and I created for our universe. It's going to be at least 28 pages. Right now, we're working through the script, and some of our action scene looks like it might actually have to expand into a 32-page book because of the stuff that has to go in the first issue.
All right.
Just thought at 24, and then there was just no way that my artist came back to me and they're like, Reese, this is stupid. We need more pages. It's not going to fit. We can't do this.
All right. Hey, hey, those are good comic book sizes too. You know.
Yeah, they are. And one of the things that we have too is the problem that I had in putting it together. When I got a cop to this, I've been doing web comics for a really long time, and infinite canvas, you get spoiled.
Yeah.
So I've had to be like, oh wait, and of course we've done our printed anthologies that are available for wide request. We can do that too. We have a couple of those left. But they're, an 8-page story is different because you're limiting the scope intentionally. When we're doing a first part of the miniseries, wanted to have, there's just certain story beats. It's got to fit in there. Our campaign, like I said, if we make, with way Indiegogo set up, is if we do flexible, which we're going to do flexible, which means if we raise $500, we're funded. That's our minimum line to be able to produce the books. So we make zero money off of it.
All right.
At 500, we're actually asking for 2,000, which is going to allow us to invest in the next book of the miniseries, as well as pay up our expenses and the publishing. And so that's so that the team, and we're a team that are doing it. The writers and artists, we're all partners in the company. And so we really are dedicated to getting these books out to people. And if we've got to take a little bit of our pocket to do that, we don't mind. We've been at this for almost 2 decades, and we really feel like we have an opportunity with Indiegogo and crowdfunding and social networking to not just be a couple of guys standing on a soapbox shouting about our stories. I think we really can take it to the next level here, and that's part of why we've dedicated to, if we get to the point at 500, everybody who's committed to those levels are getting their rewards. We really believe that the product is such that we know that the $2,000 mark is not going to be unattainable, and we are also looking at stretch goals if we get beyond that. So up to and including possibly extending the book to the graphic novel as opposed to miniseries, but we'll just have to see how that goes because we're not sure on all of that right now. So that's where we're at the moment. So, but like we're definitely excited for this, and I'm telling you, it's going to be a fun ride, guys. We are learning. It's really stretching us in ways that is exciting artistically. It's going to be a fun ride, guys. So if you follow me on Facebook, on Twitter at MD Reese or at ideal_comics, you'll be seeing pages that we'll be releasing little samples and stuff. And on Saturday, of course, our Indiegogo page is going live. And we'll be talking more about that as it goes. So yeah, that's all the news that's fit to print, I suppose.
Get ready to draw, man. You're going to come out of that as a lead artist, I'm expecting.
We'll see. We will see. And at the very least, I'll continue to be a meager cartoonist with achy fingers.
Uh-huh.
So, although I might just sheep out and finish your fan art is your prize if you decide to go that route. But once again, the $1 sketches don't stack. That's an extra buck. So, but that's it. So we're going to call it there. I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. Thank you guys for tuning in. For you guys that came in late, I hope if you really want to hear, man, it was the least directed conversation we had on the channel in a long time. I must be tired.
Saying something, hefty claim.
I'm sorry, Matt.
I say that's a hefty claim you're making there.
Oh man, I don't know. Anyway, we're gonna take off, and you guys keep reading comics.
Later, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Say